Hey, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and it's been a long time coming, but I'm finally doing my top 10 games list, and it's actually going to be a top 20. This week you get part 1, 20 to 11, since it is a countdown. For ground rules, this will have 2. First, only 1 game per franchise, partially so that one series doesn't end up being over half the list, partially so that I don't have to think too hard about how many points game B, that would have been my favorite if not for game A, loses due to being too similar to its better. The second is that I have to have played a game more than once. It's hard to judge something after only one go, things can hit differently on repeat runs, plus, memory's a funny thing and all that, so I'm only going with stuff that stood the test of time, as it were. This'll hurt the chances for visual novels and newer stuff, but there still might be some exceptions. Hopefully none of that's too objectionable, but with the standard set, let's get started. When I played Animal Crossing for the GameCube, I was able to unlock a good number of NES games, and there were a few sessions where I'd just mess with them rather than actual village life. Of the ones on offer, I really gravitated towards Balloon Fight. Kind of an odd little title where you flap around trying to pop the balloons of these weird bird guys, or fly through the air to see how far you could get, but regardless of the mode, I could just go for a while. In the main campaign, I tried getting away with knocking out the enemies before they could get into the air, then carefully move about, trying to get above them to attack or bait them into something dangerous. If a second player was around, I'd have to simultaneously work together with them while trying to snatch up the most points, and watch out not to pop their balloons. Definitely never on purpose. Balloon Trip, on the other hand, was just a high score challenge. Travel to the left, what a subversion, while avoiding sparks and getting too close to the water. The first sets of obstacles were stationary and preset, but once you got into the open air, the little electric balls just appeared at random, moving in straight paths. This one felt like it was always either a bust or a whole journey. Either I would die immediately or go on for a long time. Since what sort of arrangements were thrown in your path were RNG, it's easy to see a good run as just luck, yet for most of my successes, it always felt like I was in the zone. And there was that high score to chase. I don't actually know what's considered good, but at least at the start, your placement seems to go nowhere. Then, all at once, you start climbing the ranks fast, when you hit a certain threshold. That's when things start getting simultaneously thrilling and dangerous. Do you start taking risks and going for extra balloons to climb faster? Will stopping the sparks by popping a bubble help, or create a wall? Will taking a furtive glance at your score be just enough to get you killed? I'm not sure which mode I like more here. The main one is unique and fun, though it can be a bit deflating when you lose and have to start over. Balloon Trip, on the other hand, tends to be pretty quick, and it's one of those games that can easily devolve into a series of just one more tries that can wind up taking more time than you intended. So while an oddball title, it's still a favorite, and fun fact, I own the e-reader cards for this. I knew I wanted to put a Pikmin game on the list, but it took me a while to figure out which. I finally settled on the original. I'm not really the sort to play real-time strategies, but this one just grabs me. Or maybe I am more inclined towards the genre than I think, and Nintendo's seal of approval was what was necessary to get me in the door. Either way, I love marching these little guys around, sacrificing them in the name of my own goals, while simultaneously upsetting the planet's ecosystem. It gives it that sweet contrast of cute and horrifying, all at the same time. Adding to that is how, as weird as things can get, they can still be eerily familiar. From the creatures that obviously share DNA with our own critters, and the mundane objects you can find as treasure. Everyone knows these take place on Earth, right? The real joy with these games, though, is seeing how fast you can get them done. When I first played the original on GameCube, I only got 29 of the 30 parts, which was still passing, but I missed taking out the final boss Emperor Bulblax by a single day. Now though, my best time is all parts in 12 days in just under 3 hours, which is nowhere near the world record, but I think it's still pretty impressive. If there's one game that makes me really get the appeal of speedrunning and tempts me towards maybe giving it a try, it's this one. While all the mainline entries give me that itch to see how quickly and efficiently I can gather everything up, with this one being the shortest and most compact, it's the one I keep playing over and over. I'd say about once a year, pushing myself to cut down on my best time. And who knows? While I'm super intimidated watching actual speedrunners tear through this game at a pace that seems impossible, if I keep going like this, maybe, just maybe, one day I'll get things down enough to have my name posted on a board somewhere. Though each of my runs will still be an enjoyable time, even if I never do. I remember as a kid going to Chuck E. Cheese's and playing some beat 'em up or another, I think starring the Ninja Turtles. Of course, with how those machines are designed, no way were we getting through it with the number of tokens our parents gave us, and I mean, you didn't get tickets for it, so you couldn't even console yourself with some cruddy plastic vampire teeth when you failed. Renting Turtles in Time, though, fixed a lot of those issues. Sure, there is an upper limit to your amount of retries, but it's a lot more doable and there's no pressure on whether you should insert another coin or save it for skee-ball, needing to sucker others to do the same thing so that you weren't playing solo. Plus, I just kinda like beat 'em ups. While simple, I enjoy the namesake beating up of enemies. While not a platformer, spacing is still pretty important, as well as crowd control, and it still requires basic teamwork. Watch each other's back, don't be the only one snatching up pizza, and the like. And it's Ninja Turtles. I was a big fan of the 90s cartoon and had a good number of the playsets and action figures, which this game did a good job replicating. The vocal lines they slipped in and the other sounds and music all felt authentic. Several of the props looked like the pieces of plastic I owned, and you got a good cast of characters. Some I recognized, some I didn't, though I wish I did. And with the time traveling gimmick, some got costume changes, leaving you wondering who would show up where, as what. It became kind of a coveted cartridge, and when a friend of mine found a copy, me bringing over my old console so that we could play it was a pretty big deal. Glad it's in a collection now, along with its arcade version. While I definitely prefer the SNES edition, it's still pretty neat to see the differences, especially when you happen to come across a boss you don't recognize, and lying to tell the system that you actually did insert almost 1,000 quarters. Don't ask where we got them or how the cabinet's able to hold them. Not a very long game either, so I'm pretty much always down to give it a go. Some of my earliest gaming memories are tied to Donkey Kong Country, and of them, 2 is my favorite. Ironic, since this was the only one of the original trilogy that I didn't at least partially own, it actually being my brother's. Mine now, though. The original game was a solid platformer, and this one took all that and made it pirate-themed, which is a really fun aesthetic. And they also threw in a theme park world, complete with roller coaster. Minecart was fun, but you can't beat a roller coaster. Not only that, but it's also significantly more challenging than the first, making it feel like such an accomplishment when we finally beat it. There's also a lot more collectibles, with bonus coins actually unlocking extra levels for when you want to show off, and I think this is the origin of Rareware's self-referential quiz shows, making it so that your dumb video game trivia actually meant something, other than you getting made fun of if you happen to reveal it to anyone. Most importantly of all though, Dixie Kong is by far my favorite character from the series, and this was her debut. While I understand the balancing now, Diddy Kong is a bit quicker with some of his movements and can also protect from the front with barrels, Dixie being able to gently float down by helicoptering her hair always felt really broken. And since it was my brother's game and he played Diddy in the first, it was perfectly natural that I got to play the overpowered girl character. Nothing weird about that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the amazing soundtrack. Sure, my favorite is Sticker Brush Symphony, I'm basic like that, but with tracks like Mining Melody and In a Snowbound Land, I can listen to pretty much any of them on loop. Or just pull up a playlist of the whole thing. So yeah, I guess you could say I'm a fan. The only major complaint I have with the game is Rattly because... No, don't get into your hitbox rant. You mustn't. If it weren't for him though, this might be a few places higher, but it still doesn't stop me from loving the game to pieces. Gotta put a Dynasty Warrior on this list somewhere. I enjoy hack and slashes, and being able to take on 1,000 enemies yourself is certainly a power trip, but at the same time there is some strategy. Where you send your troops, what you attack yourself and in what order, and when to pull back to secure one of your own bases all play a part. So it's not mindless as some would have you believe, and I also get some fun out of going up against troops that you're meant to run from to see if I can manage to win anyway. Most titles also have 2-player mode, and I do love co-op, especially when you can coordinate in real time. So now the question is, which one to choose? Well, I say I like Dynasty Warriors, I really only play the licensed titles, and if I do a video game crossover, does that count as that series' entry on the list? Well, I'd argue no, but we'll still keep this simple and go with Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3. I'd been a fan since Gundam Wing, and had watched a fair bit of the shows on Toonami, but this one got me familiar with a lot of the harder to access entries, and interested in searching them out. I played this a ton with friends, and it had an original story, fully localized, that had some pretty funny scenes thrown in. The further into the games we got, the deeper I dig into the anime, so while the rest of the group would latch on to mechs that they were either familiar with or just like the design of, I was able to fill in a lot of the blanks for some of the more obscure ones. When we got to 3, there was a lot to choose from, and my player 2 and I had a lot of fun unlocking them, and seeing how powerful we could make each, while grinding up the pilots. We'd do dumb strategies where I would take a strong unit like the Double X and he'd use something fast, typically Master Gundam, to immediately run to the other side of the map, and we'd gradually pincer the entire opposing army. Even on my own, I'd continue messing around with it, and I remember one time being so hypnotized that I eventually realized that I had forgotten to eat. When I went back to fiddle with this to get some video for this list, it started sucking me back in, and I had to question whether I wanted to keep playing, or put some money on my PlayStation account to get the 4th game, which I'd missed due to it being a digital-only PS3 title, so that I could play that instead. Recent development, so I'm still mulling this one over. The point is, this combo, a favorite anime and a favorite genre, is dangerous for me. What can I say about Splatoon? I do not do shooters because I'm horrible at them. I'm a console gamer, so I rarely do mouse and keyboard, and controllers put you at a massive disadvantage in these things. That said, a third-person shooter, where there's gyro controls to make up for the joystick speed, where the main point is, to paraphrase a certain someone, shooting the floor, and I just might be able to swing that. I do have to admit that there is a certain appeal to a competitive squad-based title when you really gel with your teammates, or just do so well yourself that it feels like you're really contributing something. And while I might have found the weird voices and singing annoying at first, they've really grown on me, and I now unironically jam out to the OSTs, and will watch the game's idols' concerts when they're posted online. As for which entry is my favorite, well, that's a simple matter of process of elimination. 3 is probably the best the main game has ever been. It's got all the stuff the previous ones did and more, but at the same time, it didn't feel like it improved things enough to justify a new entry, and while I've tried multiple times to get into it, it just hasn't happened. The original was a lot of fun. I was really devoted to that one, and I might have even classified myself as good back when it was still on the Wii U. 2, though, I was probably equally into. It added in Salmon Run, was on an actual successful console, and the final Splatfest, Chaos vs. Order, was probably the most memorable and fun event I participated in any of these games. What really clinches it, though, is the DLC, Octo Expansion, which was a challenging and really fun single-player experience. It might have my second favorite finale from any game, and this is probably also what cemented Off the Hook as my top idol group, Pearl being my favorite character overall. So yeah, we're at the end of this section, maybe my order's screwed up, but it's Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 is my favorite Splatoon game, and 15th overall. And at 14, it's Kirby Superstar. When I was a kid, one of my cousins had Kirby's Adventure for NES, and the series was pretty well known besides. When my brother and I got a Super Nintendo, one of the series we wanted to try out was Kirby. So we asked for that and got Kirby's Dream Course. Nothing against that game, it just wasn't exactly what we were expecting. That made it all the sweeter when we finally got Superstar, the actual platformer. It also has some of what would become my favorite characters, like Marx and Poppy Brothers Jr. Plus, I love short games, and this was a collection of them. And some of you may be thinking, but Kirby Superstar? Surely you mean Kirby Superstar Ultra, the superior remake for the DS. But no. While for most of these, you can just assume that I prefer the latest version of any game I mention, for this one, I mean specifically the original, for 2 pretty big reasons. The first is, I just like playing this one on the TV. While I do enjoy handhelds, it can be kind of hard to downgrade to a smaller screen when you've spent a good chunk of your life elsewhere. On top of that, couch co-op was always easier for me to arrange. My brother and I would play this one all the time, but when it came to the DS, I only got someone to play with me once. The partner AI in that game ain't great, and I only managed to convince someone to sit around and wait for the download play once, and this person was not much better than the computer player, so we never managed to clear the true arena. This left a bad taste in my mouth, and I just remember thinking, man, if I could get my sibling to play this with me, it would take us like 2 tries to get this down. But nope, never happened. As such, the original Super Nintendo is the perfect storm of nostalgia, co-op, convenience, characters, single sit-down playtime, and just really solid gameplay. So yeah, I'm giving it to the SNES. Of course, if they ported Ultra to modern consoles, I think circumstances now would allow it to usurp it. I have a few people I could get to play or two for me. Doki Doki Literature Club is a very special game for me. I mean, it's on this list, so obviously, but while I think Undertale is a terrific game, I stayed away from it for a long time because the internet spoiled that to heck and back. I practically knew the entire game before I ever downloaded it. When Doki Doki Literature Club came out and started getting a similar sort of buzz, I jumped on it so fast just to avoid a repeat, and dear lord, getting to experience that game at the same time as everyone else was something special. Granted, the twist is hinted at a little bit by the warning you get when you started the game up, and I immediately had my own guesses about where things would go, but I was wrong. Or rather, I was right, things just went so much further than my initial prediction. It left quite the impression when I played this originally, and I also had a lot of fun watching other people go through and see their own decisions and reactions. I bought the DLC just to support the creator, and I plopped down money again when it came out for Switch. There was a part of me that didn't see much value in replaying it since I knew all the story beats, but hey, if I buy a game, I want to play it. So I did, went the extra mile to get the true ending, and also checked out the prequel stuff they added in. And my gosh, I got so much out of it, maybe even more so than the first time. Before this, I was kinda down on poetry. I saw it as a lesser form of writing, but after playing Doki Doki again, I developed an appreciation for it and got really into it. In addition to that, I found myself really relating to one of the characters, looked into it, and surprise surprise, people were talking on Reddit about how she was likely autistic, helping me settle some of my own self-doubts, since a lot of us do have imposter syndrome, no matter how obvious the signs. Yeah, the gameplay might be almost non-existent, but at the same time, I can't deny how profound an effect this one had on me. I can respect opinions that are different than mine, and actually love hearing people with ones that are really far off from my own. That said, Sonic Mania is the best Sonic the Hedgehog game, and I will fight you on that. Before this, I would have said either Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Adventure 2 Battle, but this just takes everything that was good about the old platformers, then remixes and innovates on all of it. You still get the gotta go fast and one ring in a dream gameplay, with each of the colorful characters playing similarly but with slight tweaks to what they can do, all without being bound by some of the hardware limitations the Genesis titles were. As much as I love Generations, its one level from each game quota really limited what they could do, while also forcing in some questionable inclusions. But this one cherry picks and is not shy about double or triple or however many dipping into the very best the series has to offer, at least when it comes to 2D. That lets them bring back fan favorite levels along with some really rockin' remixes, and seamlessly throwing in original stuff, to the point where I had to question my first time through whether some elements were new or just adapted. It also includes some odd references and subversions, like a mean bean machine boss, blue sphere, red sphere, just because, and one fight where you ride an Eggman machine while he just moves around in the water, reversing the normal roles. I played this game over and over again, with each character, and when they released DLC with Mighty and Ray, I bought it and did it another 2 times. On top of that, it probably has my favorite bonus game for the Emeralds, so not only did I clear Mania with every character, I got the super forms for each as well, and it also restored my faith in the series. As someone who both doesn't have the attention span for a bunch of long detailed rules and is banned from playing D&D, boiling that down into a video game with a short tutorial is something I can really get behind. Or to put it another way, I really like Dragon's Crown. It's got the beat 'em up action, you traveling mostly to the right, taking out enemies with movesets that are a little more complicated than the old arcade offerings, but if you choose one of the simpler classes, you can still get away with button mashing. It's got that classic fantasy flavor, with the character classes you can choose, the enemies you face, and the NPCs you encounter. It has a pretty big focus on multiplayer, which, if I had gotten anyone to play this with me consistently, other than just a few here and there team-ups, this might actually be higher. Though the game still throws some random CPUs your way to help when you're out adventuring. There's a skill tree you can build up, quests to complete, treasure to collect, and side rooms to find if you keep an eye out. While at first, you'll just be making your way through the different areas and replaying them, as you get used to things and power up your characters, you can start accessing alternate paths in each, complete with new bosses as you meet certain conditions. When you clear an area, you can go back to town to rest, level up, and repair your equipment, or keep going for better loot, for an element of risk-reward. All this is enhanced by the sense of style the game has, most obviously the distinct way Vanillaware makes their sprites and environments look like living, breathing paintings. While this was actually the second game I had played by them, Muramasa was the first, it is what solidified me as a fan, and anytime I see something new with this sort of look, I perk up. Really need to give Unicorn Overlord a try. The other part of the equation is how the game is presented. I'm not kidding about the D&D comparison. You get a voice narrating most of the pivotal events, like a DM, and not only do you have the typical fantasy foes like dragons and orcs, but there's also a gazer, reminiscent of the Baldur's Gate monster, and a rabbit that's a pretty obvious Monty Python reference. It's clear this was meant to appeal to all sorts of fans of the genre, making it a perfect fit with the art style and party-based gameplay. I have Dragon's Crown for the PS3, Vita, and PS4, and I'd buy it again if it received another port. That's the first half down. I imagine that part 2 will be a little less surprising since that'll be really getting into my core interest, and I probably mentioned a good number of the titles that'll show up there. Though even if the series they're in are a little more predictable, hopefully the specific entries are less so. But I'm getting ahead of myself. How are things looking so far? Do any of my picks seem out of left field? Are my preferences becoming a little more obvious? And did you see any of your own favorites included? This is part 1, so feel free to list your own, though maybe save the good stuff for next time. Not that top 20 is anything to sneeze at. Should probably get started on the big one, so I'll cut it here by saying thanks for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you want to see the rest. Or just, find me charming or fun to listen to. Start prepping your guesses for part 2.